How important was it for De La Cruz, I think, mentally on your end to see him come out and get 3 hits today and then an RBI later in the game, especially for how he's been playing of late and struggling?
Yesterday was pretty good. So yeah. I feel like his 2-strike approach has been the kind of, just from the eye test, has been a lot of 2-strike hits, and then but he's widened out, shortened up his swing, and still hit for extra bases. So I feel like there might be something there. Sometimes guys take a mental 2-strike approach. Sometimes it's a physical to create the mental. He's taken the physical approach that creates the mental, and it's not decreasing in his power production is still there even when he's spread out and a little bit lower. And I feel like that's something that Brownie and our hitting guys have been really good at, trying to identify some stuff to getting the balls put in play more with him. And but it's actually producing some pretty big power numbers as well. So I like where he's at in the 2-strike. Maybe there's a 2-strike. We just do it the whole time. I don't know. He's hitting the ball so well, with it. So I just like, it's obviously great for him mentally when, getting a couple hits last couple games, and, especially with some guys out in the middle of the order, we need him to roll.
Floro in the 9th today. Good to see him kind of rebound after that tough outing against Fraley on Friday where he gave up the homer. Do you kind of see him getting a bulk of the work in the 9th with Puck being out, or is it going to be more closer by committee? We're going to play matchups kind of thing? Yeah,
I'll play matchups, but I think he'll probably get the bulk. But he's going to need days off, too. I just can't keep running him out there and crush him. So, yeah, but he has experience. Tanner has experience. You could see other guys out there potentially. But, yeah, Flo's – after a tough outing, I guess, for him, he's such a competitor and he wants the ball literally the next day. And that's what you want to see with your bullpen guys. You got to flush it quick because you could be out there the next day and not let this thing carry over. And he's one of the better ones I've seen in my career to flush it and ready to go. Personality is still the same the next day. It's awesome, ready to go, and whatever you need. And it's just great to fire him out there again and get the save.
Since the last time we spoke to you, is there any further update on Jazz seeing a specialist, and then also just Puck, what led into the decision from the IM?
Yeah, so Jazz is the scene specialist tomorrow, so I misspoke on that, so I apologize. I thought it was today, but Mother's Day, and there's some conflicts, so I think they'd probably rather see him tomorrow. So we'll find out more, get more information tomorrow, and then Puck just. So the way it goes on the rostered construction, if you can only backdate it a certain amount of days, so if he was on the active roster today, we could possibly lose a day if we needed to put him on the IL. So it just made more sense to just do it now, get through whatever he needs to get through, so we can get him back sooner.
All right. Well, that was an eventful week, not just for what happened on the field, but. Well, I guess it was what happened, but not more towards the present, but what's coming in the future. Lots of injuries and some movement. So we'll dive right into it. We'll start with this first series this week that was out in Arizona, the second part of that road trip, and started off pretty bad. That Monday game was pretty deflating to watch, but I got 2 wins right after, and won the series against a pretty solid Diamondbacks team. Got to be happy with that. But what happened over that series, as you see at the pinned at the top here, that happened on about Wednesday, and he just now got put on the IL. AJ Puck hasn't really been available since Wednesday. He's been dealing with dead arms since then. And I feel like the main idea here is that the bullpen is just taxed, it's burnt out. Jesus Sanchez also had his first little nick of the week on Wednesday, and he had a second one Saturday during this Red series that we'll talk to Kevin about, since he was there for 2 of the games. The Red series was pretty deflating. The Reds are in a full-on rebuild mode right now. They have a pretty talented lineup, solid pitching rotation, but a bad bullpen. Bullpen that the Marlins really struggled to beat, it seems. So was a little disappointed there. Jake Fraley, or Rake Fraley as Reds fans call him, did indeed rake against the Marlins. Lots and lots of RBI everywhere. He got on base an insane clip. Wasn't in the lineup today, though, because of the the matchup with Braxton Garrett, but Braxton Garrett looks very, very good today. So, Kevin, well, I mean, if you have anything to add from the Arizona series, go ahead. But I feel like a lot of people didn't really get the chance to take in what had happened against the Reds this weekend. So we'll give them an update on what happened this weekend, just like the consequences of obviously Jazz and Jesus Sanchez and the bullpen kind of being deflated here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I watched any of the Arizona games besides maybe Braxton's start, and that was it. But it was a tough week as a whole, despite the 2 wins and today's win. And, obviously, you lose Jazz possibly. Jesus Sanchez is on the IL. Puck is on the IL. It's been a tough week, and it looks like the bullpen started to really crack. I mean, we saw with Floro on a Friday, he gave up the homer to Jake Fraley. It was a 3-run bomb to eventually lose the game. And then yesterday, I think it was Matt Barnes who inherited Sandy's runner, and he allowed him to score. It was not a fun series, besides today where the offense looked, I guess pretty good. Garrett Cooper was back. Braxton pitched very well. No other way to put it, but man, it's been a tough week, Grant. I mean, you kind of hope that little by little these injuries don't continue to pile up. Kind of hope it stays at this, and little by little guys start coming back today. Having Cooper back was huge. I mean, you lose out on Jesus Sanchez, possibly Jazz. You kind of bring a nice bat with Coop, who drove in the game-winning run today. So, yeah, I mean, tough week to swallow, but there's a lot of good about it, too. I mean, Yuri made his debut. He looked pretty good. I mean, besides the 2 homers he gave up, I'm not really complaining about much of his outing besides that. Maybe besides, like, a couple his fastball, which he only used it once for a strikeout, and, a guy who also uses a lot of his changeup more with the curveball, but told me after the game that, just the way the lineup for Cincinnati was put, it was easier for him to use that curveball, just shot away from the changeup. So, I mean, no real complaints here on my end from Yuri, besides maybe just, the tiny stuff. But, yeah, tough week, but, they have Washington now, so hopefully that's the get-right series. And, some pretty bad teams coming up, technically, where Miami is the better team.
This was a start of a stretch where a lot of people really thought it could be opportunity for the Marlins, but the Reds having been just this past weekend, you've got the Nationals, you've got the Giants, you've got the Rockies, and you've got, the Angels, they're solid, so I won't include them. But there are a lot of not so very good teams coming up on the schedule for the Marlins, and they just dropped the series to a bad team. And then again, this is a rebuilding Reds team. They have a fun lineup. They have a solid young rotation, but at the end of the day, it's not a good team. Yes, they're only a few games out of first in the NL Central, but still, they're not a good team. I'm going to tell you right now, the Reds will still probably lose close to 100 games if I had to guess, if they don't surpass that number. But you got to do something against the Nationals at least. You have to probably bare minimum win that series. I'm hoping for a sweep. I feel like a sweep would be the only way I'd be really satisfied, but 1 game under 500 now. Are they 20 and 22? I didn't look at the standings.
20 and 21.
2021. Okay, well, if they're 1 game under, then yeah, that would make sense. I don't know where I pulled the 22 from, but
I don't blame you.
Yeah, this is a stretch where they really have to capitalize because it just gets tougher after this. Last year, we kind of had the same conversation as to where the Marlins got a lot of really bad teams out of the way, especially in the month of July last year. They played a lot of really bad teams, and it's like, okay, well, August and September, it's a really tough schedule. Are you going to be able to navigate through that at all? And no. And Eli says this a lot, and it is true. You can't look too far ahead. It just depends on what kind of team you're facing on a week-to-week basis. But there are really good teams at the back half of Miami's schedule. But right now, there are some not so very good teams.
Well, let me jump in right there, Grant. So they lost this whole week, even though based on the tone, you wouldn't know it. They actually won half of their games this week. It was a 3-3 week. It doesn't feel that way, as we'll get to, because of the injuries. The fact that Jesus was so pivotal in them winning the D-back series, and then he gets hurt at the end of it, and now we know that he's going to be out for a substantial amount of time, for a number of weeks, it seems. That's pretty deflating for a team that, as we know, is already really struggling, really limited on offense, where every single game it's a chore just to get to a big number. So this weekend, they lose against the first of those weak teams that everybody had circled on the schedule that they were excited to face. They lose this series to the Reds. They lose it in a way that makes you even more concerned about the long-term viability of the team, because the bullpen ruined it. Well, the bullpen ruined the first game, and then it was Sandy in the second game where everybody's like looking at him to get back on track, and he doesn't quite do it. He resembles the guy that we all knew from last year, but he doesn't quite put it all together for an entire start, with only one exception way earlier in the year, and that was over a month ago at this point. So then here in the finale, Braxton gives him a good start, but for most of that game, the offense doesn't show up. They're held scoreless for the first 5 innings by Luke Weaver. Luke Weaver, who is like the quintessential number 6 starter for any organization, and they couldn't get anything going off of him until his third time through the order. They only score those 2 runs and go ahead because the Reds have their own injuries, and they call up this guy, Alan Busenitz, who had not pitched in the majors in 5 years. That's the guy who gives them the like deciding runs in this Sunday game for them to salvage something at the very end of this and end on a somewhat of a high note, because they're facing Alan Busenitz. So that's how you get that third win of the week, and that's how we get to where we are right now. Again, this coming against a series of what you thought would be an easy opponent for the Marlins at home against the Reds team that had their own injuries. And the fact that, they just barely won that one game in the series, that they were outscored in the series overall, I think that should tell you that there really aren't a whole lot of opponents at all that you should feel super confident in the Marlins steamrolling. There's just not that much of a talent advantage for them at the moment, given their own injuries, given some of the guys that are still very confusingly underperforming for this team, especially offensively. So there is, I think it goes without saying that there is certainly a big question about whether they can maintain floating around this 500 mark, regardless of who they're playing against.
Right, and you did mention that the Reds are dealing with their own injuries. They got lucky missing Nick Lodolo. He just went on the 15-day IL, got scratched yesterday. And missed TJ Friedel, who, like Jake Fraley, has been seeing the ball very, very well recently. The Reds have done a really good job of just identifying guys that can plug and play in a rather weak lineup as they're navigating the early years of a full-on rebuild before they wait for their top guys to come up. And the Marlins just missed some of their top prospects, too. They're expected to probably call up Matt McClain, Christian Encarnacion Strand, in like maybe the next week or two from the Reds writers I follow. And, of course, Ellie De La Cruz is going to be up at some point as well. So the Marlins are lucky that was only 2 of 3 in that sense. And like Eli said, you can't really feel good about them steamrolling any team because there's a talent disparity right now. The Nationals were the team they owned last year, and the Nationals are probably the reason why the Marlins didn't lose 100 games last year. And this is the first they'll see them, and they're not going to see them nearly as much with this new schedule format, only 13 games as opposed to 19 games. A 3-game weekday series in Miami, average attendance is probably going to be 5,000. But it's an opportunity.
I'll let you know. I'll be in that first game. I'll be covering that with Isaac. And at least the pitching matchup will be fun for that first game. Will be Luzardo against my favorite player, Josiah Gray. There's some fun pitching matchups. Yeah, Edward and Mackenzie Gordon, then Yuri. I wanted to mention going back to the Red Series. When did Jake Fraley become the new Ryan Zimmerman or Ken Griffey Jr. with that series he had? I don't know if I think Eli put the stat out where compared to all the Marlins players, he has like the 3rd most RBIs at Lone Depot Park, which is just crazy to even think of. It's pretty sad. And it says more about the offense than it does about Jake Fraley. I think he's tied for second.
Tied for second for most RBI in Lone Depot Park.
Only tied for third. Don't give him too much credit. He's behind Jazz and he's behind Soler, although we don't know if Jazz will be adding to his total in the near future, depending on how this injury shakes out. Yeah, 4 RBIs in each of the first 2 games of the series. And yeah, he got some against Sandy. He got some against Floro. I think that was the first game. So not even against the cheap competition. Like he was doing it against some of the best that the Marlins have to offer. Credit to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it really shows you how anemic the offense have been, especially at home, where someone could come in and have, a good 2 games, and he's already, more than, the RBIs for the Marlins. That's just crazy to think of. Looking at it right now, Jorge Soler, 20 games, 11. You look at Jazz, 9, 20, and he just tied with our best hitter, Arias. 20 games, 8 RBIs. This guy did it in 2. He didn't even have to play in the last game of the series to even crack that list. And that really just shows you, I don't know if it's this Lone Depot Park, if it's the players adjusting to it, but it really shows you how bad the offense is just compared to the rest of the league.
Well, it also shows why their run differential is what it is and why they shouldn't be where they are right now. And not to be that guy, but, when you look at the pipe bag record, they're way under 500. I think it's like 10 games under or just under that. But, yeah, I mean, and, and even this series, like, the offense was bad, but, like, they scored some runs. In game 1, they scored, I think it was 4 runs. In game 2, they scored 5. And then today, they scored, what was the number?
4. 4 to 1 win, 3?
3 to 1 win. So it's not, this series wasn't about scoring runs. I mean, when you look at game 1, the easy blame goes
3-1 today.
It could go to the bullpen, I would say, because Yuri, I know he gave up the 2 homers, but
he looked good.
Right after he came out, it was everyone else. The Marlins got right back on the board, I believe. Yeah, they scored 2 runs in the bottom of the 5th against Ashcraft, who didn't look all too good that day.
Yeah, his last pitch, I believe, was a home run. I think
it was like pitch 100. I think was that home run that he got pulled out on.
It was homer to the Jazz, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, Yuri looked great. I mean, for someone who's MLB debut, 20 years old. Against, I don't want to say tough competition, but you going up against, we think what Drake Fraley did. Jonathan India is always a tough guy to get out. And to go out there 7 Ks, a lot with his curveball. I didn't expect him to, go lights out, no hitter, perfect game, complete game shutout. But to do what he did, and his first MLB debut, not even AAA, anything like that, barely going 8 innings, 7 innings in the minors, to come out there and do that against an MLB team, really showed a lot. I think it's a good start for Yuri.
I will say, I wouldn't say he did great. He was good, but you have to keep in mind he gave up 2 homers, and that's
there were some really long at bats too. There were just unnecessary.
Yeah,
there was like a 10-pitch one.
Yeah, that was Fraley. Fraley had 12 at that. He was.
Yeah, that was.
I think you got to give him MVP. Yeah, he gets MVP for the series.
Well, nobody picked him. Nobody picked him in our prediction contest.
An MVP of the series really should be a Marlin, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean,
I understand how the scoring works. I did pick a Reds.
Yeah, like a 15 pitch at that.
Tyler Stevenson hit that first home run, but he didn't really do anything after that. Oh well. We'll take a quick look ahead here to next week. I mean, we've already talked about the Nats, but I want to talk about.
Does Yuri pitch against the Nats this week, Eli?
He does.
We expect him to pitch on Thursday. Yeah, I do think it's worth a little bit more time on the injuries and how they affect how we feel about this team right now. So you have 2 guys now on the IL for sure. That's Jesus and that's Puck. And as a pitcher, Puck, it's a minimum of 15 days. As Skip explained post-game, they wanted to get done right now. Even if they felt like maybe he could get through this without too much trouble, they want to get it done now just so that they can retroactively backdate it and get those 15 days done as soon as possible. So that was the explanation for that, where he hadn't pitched since Wednesday, and they could backdate it up to 3 days is the rule here, which means that, knock on wood, he's back within 2 weeks. But this guy has been, for the most part, in you could argue both him and Brazaban and Floro. You can make an argument, I guess, for any of them as the best reliever in this bullpen, but there have been a lot of stretches where I think you'd point to Puck as the number 1 guy, the most trustworthy guy, the one who's almost immune to have real big, bad blow-ups just because how good a job he does keeping the ball in the park and getting soft contact. He's just been everything they could have wanted. Now with him out of the picture, everybody has to move up a little bit on the hierarchy. All of a sudden, Dylan Floro is the main closer, and Brazaban is the one that comes in certain situations. And when you go from puck to any other lefty in the bullpen, that's kind of where the pretty big drop off is right now. When those other guys that are next in line, those are righties, and you don't quite have the same. There are certain matchups that are probably going to be a problem for this bullpen that haven't been a problem so far this season. It just goes back to the fact that you touched on this before, right? They've been relying too much on this bullpen. It is right entering today. They were tied for second in the majors for most innings pitched by any bullpen. They're relying on them almost as much as any other team in the league. That catches up to you eventually for some guys in different ways. And, Puck is the one big casualty that they've had over the last month, just as JT Chagua is coming back. We were all dreaming about, what does this bullpen look like when everybody's available at the same time? And we're not going to find out for a while.
Thankfully, they have what you mentioned right there, that their usage is insane. I feel like it's also been a testament as to how disappointing the starting rotation's kind of been to start the year. Outside of Luzardo, has anyone Braxton Garrett too? Has anyone even met expectations? I feel like Luzardo's the only one that's maybe even exceeded them. But Sandy's been disappointing. Trevor wasn't even that good before he went on the IL. Edward, there's some concern there. Johnny Cueto, we don't even mention him. The rotation's been. It was mentioned as a strength all offseason. It's been mentioned as a strength this entire rebuild, and it might be a bigger weak link than a lot of us are thinking.
It's been able to hold up, Grant. I mean, Braxton today held it down. Sandy held it down for some parts of yesterday. I mean, I do want to talk about Sandy because that was pretty demoralizing to watch the end of his outing, and I'm starting to, and I know we say not to doubt Sandy, but I'm starting to doubt him just a little bit. I mean, yesterday was really bad, and Luzardo's been good. And then Edward has his days where he's really damn good, and then other days where it's just, 5 walks, 6 walks. So I wouldn't say it's been the biggest weakling, but it's definitely been a concern. With
the biggest weakling will always be the offense in this regard until they pick it up. But I would most disappointing area, I'd say it may actually be starting rotation because the offense has been disappointing, but we knew that they weren't going to be that great just given that they didn't really add that much to an already pretty stagnant offense. But they got Johnny Cueto in there. Sandy's coming off a Cy Young. Edward Cabrera might pitch a full season. Trevor Rogers looking to bounce back after a sophomore slump.
And you hope Trevor comes back strong and you're kind of hold it down while he's in the rotation. And Braxton, if he keeps doing what he's doing, you feel pretty good about some certain guys. And, man, I mean, I know Sandy went 7 2/3. He struck out 9, but he gave up 6 earned runs. Like, that's pretty damn bad. And I know Matt Barnes a lot. He inherited 2 of those runners that Sandy left on base. And he
gave up a 3-run homer. He couldn't navigate around Jake Fraley.
Yeah, and just looking at the player breakdowns on Baseball Savant, you go to Sandy and his velo was down on every single pitch, and his spin rate was down on every single pitch. I mean, just mechanically, something wasn't working there. And then you go just look at the velos. The one that was significantly down was his slider, which was down 1.2 miles. So, I mean, it was pretty bad outing for Sandy. But there was some positive, obviously. He kept them kind of in it there. And the offense, it was back and forth offensive game towards the end. But yeah, it was a tough watch yesterday, watching Sandy kind of just try to hold it down. And the offense really didn't provide him with anything until the 4th inning where they scored the first run of the game. And after that, he gave the 3-run bomb. I mean, it's weird with Sandy. I think he'll make adjustments. Obviously, he's a guy to do that. But I don't know. It's just such a demoralizing series is the way I see it, besides today where they looked good. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they did have some big opportunities. They used some of them. So, and you really can't be losing to a Cincinnati bullpen game where they use Derek Law as their starter, and then you just go down the list, and it's just,
that Reds bullpen is not good. Alexis Diaz,
and even Alexis
is the only
good
arm in that bullpen.
And he struggled on Saturday. He walked 3 guys, and, he loaded the bases up for Yuli Gurriel, and, I guess he had a pitch clock violation, so he started off 0-1. And I guess that just screwed Yuli the rest of the way over.
Then he swung on every pitch after that.
Well, that slider that he swung at the end of the game, I mean, why? Just why?
This man wanted to be the hero on Cuban Heritage Night. He was looking for every pitch.
They were chanting his name there. Yuli. The whole Cuban section was chanting his name, and he did that. That's pretty bad.
I think the most surprising part of that ninth inning actually was Jake Segura got on base and
he had an RBI today.
Didn't he have like 18 walks this series?
18 or 8?
He's exaggerating. He's just exaggerating. Perfect. Yeah, Segura overall, this is what I was calling for, that they would give him a breather after he had that ejection. They listened. On Tuesday, they gave him the day off. On Wednesday, they gave him the day off. Thursday, the scheduled day off. Then he's back in there. And he, by his standards, this was a dominant series. By anybody else's standards, it's mediocre. It's something. It's progress considering where he was before. He got on base 3 times on Saturday, and then here on Sunday, he got the hit that. Which one was it? That was the game tying hit, the one that tied it up. They fell behind by 1. That's a very high leverage situation. I mean, it was a ground ball. The issue is that he continues to hit everything on the ground, and when you do that, you're just not going to get anything more than the occasional single. So he's not totally fixed. At the same time, his performance thus far this year has had some bad luck going in with it. And I'm glad that, he found a hole in this most recent game to get on board. There weren't any egregiously bad defensive plays by him during this Red series. I feel like he should be better than he's shown as a third baseman, as unfamiliar of a position as it is. What was else? But the other thing I was going to touch on with the offense is now the other injuries, at least temporarily. Maybe fingers crossed things go well with Jazz when he sees the specialist that he's seeing about his foot. But that's never a great sign when you have to consult an outside specialist. I would not be surprised if he follows Jeezy onto the IL for a brief period of time at this point. And without those two, they have no left-handed power whatsoever. They have Luis Ariz, who is an awesome at everything except for power, and they have Wendell, who is still really not hitting at all since coming back from his injury. When he's on, he's a useful offensive player, but again, everything except for power with him. And that's what I look forward. And I don't really see the path to winning consistently if you don't have left-handed hitters that hit for power, because you're facing mostly right-handed pitchers. If most of the day you're facing these teams and you just don't have many real power threats at all against right-handed pitching, then you're just not going to score runs. And so far this season, that's been an issue, even with Jazz mostly healthy and Jeezy mostly healthy. Without those two, it's scary to think exactly how limited they are most matchups because of that absence of power from that side of the plate.
Just to add on to Gene Segura, he walked 5 times in this series and only struck out twice. He obviously had the RBI today, so I mean, it was a good series for him. And then
got on base. That's all you really asked for at this point.
He went up.
I want to mention Peyton Burdick struck out 3 times today. It was really bad today, and he had a pretty good day yesterday. And overall, I mean, he's been on a nice stretch, just excluding today's game, which Baseball Reference hasn't updated it. But just looking from the Arizona series to this one, he's hitting 308, 357, 692 with an OPS of 1.49 with a homer and 2 RBIs. And it's been nice. It's been nice to have a guy like Peyton Burdick who we kind of rely on. He's making the case to stay. The obvious issue is the strikeouts, and he's actually walked a couple times, which is nice.
Can I bring sorry to cut you off, Kev. Can I bring something up into discussion? I wanted to bring up the catching position and how just, I wouldn't say bad, but that would kind of like be putting it nicely. How horrible.
It was bad. No.
Terrible, no good.
It was bad. It was horrible.
I think it's the worst overall catcher group in Major League Baseball.
The Tigers are pretty bad, though, right? Besides Eric Haas?
Eric Haas at least can hit the ball. He can hit a couple homers for you. Like, he won't, he's more of a DH type guy, but still.
I want to mention how bad Stallings was on Friday. Like, I don't know how many pass balls was it. Yeah, maybe had 2. It was pretty bad on Friday. Like,
that was anyone stealing
quality at one point.
See, I think he may have caught one guy.
Yes, exactly. One caught stealing. He has more passed balls than caught stealing, which is very that kind of hammers home exactly where it is. Where the things that he's supposed to do well, he's not doing well this year, and it's now a quarter of the way into this season. I mean, it's not a tiny sample anymore with these guys almost splitting playing time down the middle. Stallings getting a little bit more than Fortes, and Fortes continues to what we saw last year from him seemed kind of legit. And the fact that he's coming so far below replicating that, it puts him in a really tough situation at that position. Right now, by wins above replacement, they're the worst catching position in baseball. So that's a hole. And I mean, the issue is with that one, there's just not a whole lot of conversation to be had about what to do internally. There's nobody that you would call up at this particular moment that is really going to help in that case, even if you do something drastic.
Would you even think about bringing up Paul McIntosh? Just a thought.
He's injured.
He's injured. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, when he gets better.
Well, but he's injured. We don't know when he's going to get better, and that's the part of where I would point to him as somebody that you consider giving a shot, just because the offensive floor is so much higher. But for this moment, it's just Austin Allen or bust. And Austin Allen had he was a guy that had an 0 for 40 streak not that long ago. More recently, he's been fine, but he's also a very flawed player defensively, and he also strikes out a lot. And he doesn't run. He doesn't run much faster than Stallings does. He occasionally hits the ball hard and gets rewarded for it with extra base hits. He's been playing better lately, but you don't really get anything from the stats because he's been at AAA for several years now. So you don't really learn anything from there. I don't think that's a guy that you really get. That's not somebody that you really have significant hopes for if you were to squeeze into this mix.
Wilson Ramos doing nowadays?
Oh my God! Don't even.
Yeah,
like
I don't know about all
the
that.
only thing, and after Allen, like it doesn't get any better. You have Santiago Chavez, who's been pretty damn bad. He can't hit. I mean, he hits more than Stallings, but he still can't hit.
Time for Banfield.
Banfield is good defensively, but excluding today's game where he had a homer, he's hitting 198. So,
do they look outside the organization? Is it like I know you only want to trade for a catcher
at this point? I just want to mention they were rumored for Sean Murphy this offseason, and they didn't go through with it.
Yeah, and I think they mentioned Contreras too at some point, right? Or was that a couple off seasons ago?
For a few years, they have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're up over under 500, you have to look for a catcher.
Oh, well, it's about a half hour of us. Why don't we get to the fans here, shall we? So, first off, you guys know where I'm going with this. Consider becoming a super subscriber, super follower, whatever you want to call it. It is the best deal that's out there on Twitter. $3 a month. That is the lowest you could have made it. You get all access to everything Fish Stripes. You get all access to the gift database. You get to play fantasy sports with us. We have a super subscriber fantasy baseball league. Win prizes. Lots of giveaways. The game notes that they give to the media before the games. You guys get them. That stuff is the Bible. It's good. It is every Marlins stat you could want. What else are we thinking
How much?
here? Series predictions. You can make those. I think we still have a super follower, super subscriber leading our standings after that series. I know Kevin's up there towards the top. I'm not. What else? Oh, you get of course, we always mention it in here. You get the first priority to ask questions. Anyone who has a question can ask it, but we will give the super subscribers first priority. And then again, this is all just $3 a month. It is definitely worth the deal. Is there any benefits I missed, you guys?
That's about it. I've been toying with the idea of dropping occasional scoops on there before I feel comfortable making them public. I feed them to the super subscribers first. I was thinking of doing that with the Yuri call up, but held back in that particular case. But that's going to be part of it. And the giveaways, we have some stuff lined up in the very near future regarding Marlins stuff that you get for free as part of it kind of pays for itself is what I mean, with all the generous stuff that we try to tease in throughout the season, really all year round.
Yeah, and then again, it is literally the lowest we could make. It is $3 a month for it. We'll bring in Romeo. who was I think our first ever super subscriber.
Probably.
He won our fantasy football league. He's loading in. And again, anyone who has a question, you can go ahead and request. This is the fan question time. This is the fun part of the show. That's why we do this. So, Romeo, what do we got?
How's it going? Happy Mother's Day to anybody that's listening with their mother, or just to your parents in general. But I'm not here to ask a question. I'm here to spread propaganda, and his name is Justin Lawrence. Pitched 2 innings today, had 3 Ks, and closed the game for the Rockies. His last outing against the Mets, what I last seen, he pitched an inning, struck out 3, and walked 1, and got the loss. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that sounds like a average stat line for most people, but it's still somebody that they should look at, especially with Puck getting injured. I know we need lefties, but I'm done with the Sixto talk. I'm moved on to now.
Sixto's done. Sixto's done. He's not in there. They're not relying on him anymore. If he comes back, great, but they're no longer relying on him. I'm looking at his game log on the fantasy baseball app because that's what a rational person does. He's had a pretty big workload recently, it seems.
I hate to break it to you, Roman, but knowing the Rockies are probably going to do what they did to Daniel Bard and probably extend them.
The Rockies are not a logical franchise sometimes with their trade chips. With Justin Lawrence, I mean, it is just to make it clear, like he is having a pretty great year out of their pen, a sub-2 ERA while pitching half his games at Coors Field. That is insane. And his FIP is 2.67 after today's game, which is similarly terrific. He has a bunch of years of control remaining. I think, at least another 5 years of control beyond this year. So this is somebody that they'd have to give up a significant amount of prospects capital to acquire, I imagine. We'll see. The Rockies themselves are not that much worse than the Marlins in the standings. They are surprisingly, they've been, after getting off to a really bad start, they've been about splitting their games the last few weeks. So 17-24 overall. They're not going to quit quite yet. I think the only team in the majors that is really quitting right now is probably the Oakland A's, who don't even have double-digit wins yet.
It never even began.
Yeah, but with every other team at this particular juncture, a quarter of the season into it, they're still like not embarrassing enough to do something drastic. Maybe them in the next team you circle is the White Sox as a potential seller, because the White Sox now are 14-28. They have a lot of expensive players that are probably not part of their future anyway. It's really just the A's and the White Sox, even if you want to dream about trade right now. And then the Royals kind of are in that same boat potentially, but it's just still too soon to even conceive of like actual significant trades happening.
With those teams that you just said, don't we play like all of them in the next couple coming weeks? What about that? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I know that the Royals are up on the schedule soon.
They literally play each other back to back. So they begin a series with Oakland on June 2nd, and then June 5th they play the Royals, and then they head to Chicago to play the White Sox on June 9th.
So, yeah, there should be at least one sweep in there. At least you would hope.
No, you gotta be careful. You might have said that about this Red series. A lot of people said that about this Red series too, coming into it. So be careful. Although I assume the jokes are going to be flying next month when those teams come to town about because both of those are in Miami. So that I guess that would help on paper about having those teams fly in and just telling them leave this player behind with you while you're here. Once we get to that portion where it's still like 3.5, 4 weeks away, that's kind of the time where maybe you start contemplating these deals actually happen if those teams continue to free fall between now and then.
And even then, the Marlins really don't have that many trade chips. It's pretty depressing. The farm is not great. There aren't a lot of really, really good trade chips. If you want to go trade for, let's say, Tim Anderson, I think would be the best get from many of those.
He's not even been that good. He's been
he really hasn't. But
coming back from injury.
Ask for a lot for him.
You might as well trade for Yasmani Grandal.
Oh my God! Never. No, he can.
No.
I'd rather trust Stalling still the ball to second base than Yasmani Grandal. I seen a TikTok today.
I think I saw the same thing you did. Yeah.
He was like, he had the arm of an 18-year-old. I almost cursed on apologize. Yeah, you would have lost your super subscriber privilege.
Go easy on Romeo.
Yeah, we appreciate the statement. We got a couple more requests, so we'll get them in. We got Ryan here. He's become a recurring guest here. He's a
future Fish Stripes rider right here. This is our top prospect.
What's up, guys? Can you guys hear me all right?
Gotta start him young.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So I got a few questions prepared. Maybe I'll be able to ask two, but something that I wanted to put into the air that, I've been looking at, with AJ Puck on the IL now for at least the next 2 weeks, well, probably only the next 2 weeks, or about maybe a little under the next 2 weeks. Do you think that with Chagua probably coming back tomorrow, being officially reinstated, do you think they'll give him a closer opportunity, maybe after his first 2 starts off the IL if he looks good? Do you think they'll give him a closer opportunity? Because I know people are also thinking maybe Brazoban, or of course Floro would be the obvious choice to get the most opportunities at the closer spot per se situation. But I think they should give Chagua and Brazoban a chance because they were both great before, obviously, Chagua went to the IL, and Brazoban's been great all season.
Skip said he would go closer by committee. I would just count on that for now. But, I mean, if he pitches well, may as well. And obviously, Skip has his way. Floro is probably going to be the guy he mainly goes to if he continues to pitch well. But, you probably can never count out someone like Chagua, who was the best pitcher, their best reliever right before he went on the IL. So I'll just put it like that. He's been good in the high relief situations, the small ones he's been in. So, I mean, at this point, anyone you could count on, but I know Eli had to say something. He was trying to unmute there.
Yeah, Chagua looked outstanding early in the year. He's continued to look outstanding on his rehab assignment. And that's something I always like to draw attention to, is not just somebody that is ready to return after getting their reps in the minors. It's about how they actually performed down there. And he was pretty terrific facing AAA competition over this past week. He actually does, his stuff is all the way back to what it was before, with the mid-90s fastball, with the mid-80s slider that he has really good command of too, to spot it exactly where he wants to. That was a big pickup, and now thankfully, fingers crossed, the next 3 quarters of the season they have another really valuable arm to add to their pen. I think, Ryan, you kind of put it the correct way, where you want to see him the first couple times that he appears with them first before we're putting him in a super high leverage role. You give him a couple opportunities to pitch first. And if he is just as sharp as he was before his injury against major league competition, then you really have to have that good problem in terms of whether you want to put him at the very top of the pecking order, with Floro and Brazoban still being in the mix. They're not going to do anything definitive right off the bat. They'll see him pitch a couple times. And for the time being, Floro is the one where in most situations, I think Floro is still going to get those save opportunities while Puck is out.
Real quick, if you guys don't mind. So my question here is something with today, obviously Braxton, a good outing. Do you guys see him holding his own for the rest of the season in this rotation? And maybe what do you guys think the future will be like for Braxton if he keeps pitching this way? Because obviously his stuff does not blow you away, but he has been consistent. Some could argue that he's been the most consistent starting pitcher in the Marlins rotation. I mean, Luzardo might be close right with him, but other than that one start against Atlanta where they just kept him out as long as they could possibly do so before he couldn't throw more pitches. Other than that start where I believe he gave 11 earned runs, he's been good. So what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I mean, as long as Cueto's out, he's going to be starting, and the expectation would be Cueto's going to be out for a while, and it'll be Braxton's spot. And you're right, Ryan. He's not disappointed. And there's been a couple starts, obviously the one against the Braves, where it was probably one of the worst starts in franchise history, or he put up a stat that was really bad. But after that, Arizona, I really don't think the box score speaks for itself. He pitched very well until the very end, and he allowed a couple runs, and I think it was Nardi who came in, and he had to carry the inherited runners from Braxton, which scored. and that kind of ruined the box score. He incorporated the cutter today, which is something I think Mel had told him about in Arizona. I think that's what I heard. And his velo's been up on basically every pitch besides the curveball for the last 2 starts, something that he realized that the velo was down. So Braxton's been very consistent here, very, very much right. And he's going to be holding it down. I mean, we're finally starting to see the Braxton that I think everyone expected to see when he was first drafted to the Marlins. And it's good to see because they really need him right now. And, you know, we were talking about it before. This has been a very disappointing season for the rotation as a whole. So having a guy like Braxton has been kind of holding it down there and holding his own is nice to see.
Well, as I often do, I'll take the glass half empty view of it. With Braxton, even when he does well, there's this big question about him the third time through the order. That's been a question before. It's a question now. There's a question before about him against righty batters. He has very big platoon splits where he does well against lefties, especially this year. That dramatic split is that when he faces righties, they generally blow him up. Today was very encouraging. I'll give Tim a lot of credit for today, because today he faced an all right-handed lineup, and yet he did extremely well those first 5 innings until the very 6th inning. So with him, today was very encouraging. He has the deepest pitch mix of anybody on this Marlins team. He has 6 different pitches. He's got a 4-seamer, he's got a sinker, he's got a changeup, he's got a slider, he's got an occasional curveball, and now he has this brand new cutter. It is not normal for someone to have 6 pitches that they can really mix in a variety of situations. That's kind of how he gets the most out of his ability, is because of that unpredictability in finding situations that he wants to use those pitches in. All that being said, just the lack of length that you get from him in his starts, because of how things kind of come undone the third time through a lineup, that is part of why they're in this situation with their overworked bullpen in the first place, because you have guys that aren't going super deep into the game. As excited as everybody is about Yuri being up here, and that Yuri on a per inning basis, I expect him to be even more effective than Brax. He even more so. His innings are going to be capped very tightly in order to get him through as much of the season as possible. He's not somebody that's going to go deep into games either. When you have those 2 pieces in your rotation, you even have Edward Cabrera, who has all those same concerns because he walks everybody and he's inefficient with his pitches. This is kind of the question is about if you're not getting enough length from these pieces of your rotation, then it's going to continue to put a lot of work on this bullpen and put these relievers in situations where if they just are used too much, they're not going to be as effective as they should be. Yeah, with Braxton, he's going to get this opportunity just because they don't have any other options that are healthy at the moment. He fully deserves to get this long leash to prove himself. Eventually, he's going to have to break through that middle inning wall that he has been hitting this year. He's going to have to show that he can have success into the 5th, 6th, and occasionally the 7th inning in order to make this all sustainable for the Marlins.
All right, and then my last question here before I let some of the other listeners get some of their questions is, what do you guys think, or who do you guys have on your radar to step up for this offense? Not necessarily any guys in AAA. You know, I know they have Gerard Encarnacion, Jacob Amaya, guys who could be call-ups in the next few months, but just now with Jazz possibly going to the IL and Sanchez also already on the IL, who do you have starting to step up and maybe get some more production at the plate? You know, just anyone who's already in this lineup, and, you know, maybe a guy who you just have on your radar for a hot streak in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Seems like De La Cruz is hitting the ball well right now. He's one of the streakiest players in the entire league.
Yeah, dude. Please don't count on De La Cruz.
I will not be counting on him, but he's heating up right now.
If he heats up, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, he'll be good for next week or 2, but then he'll be hitting below the Mendoza line for another 2-week stretch here.
Wendell had a pretty good series, I will say. Not only did he look good defensively, he had that triple, which I know is the Will Myers situation. That was pretty funny.
Well, it should have been a fly out, but...
Yeah, but, you know, he got lucky there. He looked all right. And I think Peyton Burdick's the name to look at. I mean, he had the homer. He had a pretty good series against the Reds. I know he struck out today three times. It was pretty bad. But aside from that, I mean, not much complaints from Burdick. I just think he really just has to be a lot more patient at the plate. And, yeah, that's what I would look at. Hopefully, I mean, if Gene Segura could get anything going at this point, that would be nice. Yeah, it's kind of hard because this offense has been like so bad. You kind of just rely on the same guys, Ryan. Arias, Cooper's now back, so you kind of hope that he was doing what he did before at the very start of the season. Yeah, it's very hard to look at names right now. And if you want to go to AAA, obviously you mentioned it, Encarnacion, who had it was a homer today, and he had an RBI. Edwards is in the minors, so they could call him up at any point. Besides that, I mean, a non-40-man guys, Hinojosa has been pretty damn good for Jacksonville. He had 2 homers yesterday. Jake Mangum's been good. I know many have called it luck, but I think he's been pretty good. So there's guys in AAA, but right now in the current roster, I think I would only mention Burdick and maybe Wendell. That's really about it on my end, at least.
Well, Burdick, I'm very bullish on Burdick's potential if he puts it all together. I wouldn't rely on him to get hot all of a sudden. I'm saying this is really the opportunity for him to play semi-regularly after having this really crowded corner outfield situation, and especially now with Jazz's status being up in the air and having center field opportunities potentially opening up. Like, this is the time to find out what they have in Peyton Burdick. There's really no excuse for him not to be starting the majority of their games for the foreseeable future. With Sanchez out, with Avi, who knows when he's going to come back. This is his opportunity, and it could come at any of those outfield spots. It should come a lot, and we should find out exactly what they have in him, whether there is enough extra base power to offset all of the strikeouts. This is the time to find out with him what he has in there. And I don't want to be too negative, but the timing of this Jazz injury is a very big bummer because Jazz just had those home runs in back-to-back games. He was a guy that his hitting was like the least impressive part of his game to this point in the season. And that was the thing we were counting on most of all. And it was finally turning around this weekend. If in a best case scenario, this foot thing proves to be tiny and he gets back really soon, then Jazz is the one more so than anybody else that you point to as somebody that is talented enough, has now the recent track record from last year to show us that Jazz should be a very effective offensive player moving forward if he is able to get over this foot scare without anything coming in his way. And if he is out, then it really puts you in this tough situation where there's only so much talent that you can lose and expect to stay afloat. So I'm still fingers crossed for Jazz that this proves to be a not so serious thing. Yeah, he's somebody that needs to be one of those big pillars of their offense moving forward.
All right, thanks guys for letting me ask my questions. And to anyone listening, and if you're not a super subscriber, make sure to subscribe for only $3 a month.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, thank you.
Goat.
All right, we'll go to Brian here. He's been requested, and I will get his question.
Can I get Carver on?
If he wants to request, I'll invite him.
Please, Carver.
All right, Brian, what's your question?
Hey guys, you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep. I mean, it's probably more so just gonna do a little bit of venting overall and get some insight on what you guys think of things. Overall, it feels like we're 10 games or more under 500 as we're sitting today. It doesn't feel like we're 1 game under. There's a lot of holes on this team. If Jazz goes on the IL, you guys want a left-handed hitter, why not just bring up Mangum? Bring him up. He's doing solid.
My guy.
The whole Sandy situation, honestly. And I just think the starting rotation as a whole, like with Braxton that day, he allowed a bunch of runs. I think another problem is that, Skip is leaving these guys in the game too long. Like today, I think it was the perfect timing to pull Braxton out the game. I think he gave a back-to-back singles. He was in 83 pitches, 6 innings, pull him out the game. Whereas we saw, with Sandy yesterday, he just let him keep going, and he got into more trouble. Now I'm just worried.
To your point, that the Yuri one was what got me on Friday. I thought Yuri should have been out before that.
Yeah, that was another surprise too. I had changed the channel and put the hockey game after his 4th inning, not thinking he was going to go in the 5th. And then he's back in the 5th. I just don't want it to be a situation where you burn some of these guys out, and then it could lead to an injury. And then well, I mean, we're already kind of screwed. This is going to be even worse. And then, another point I want to bring up, the catching situation. Like, just watching Jacob Stallings on plate, like, when he's going to hit, it just makes you think, like, why is this guy, like, how much more could we allow Jacob Stallings? You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather someone else be hitting to Jacob Stallings. You know what I mean? Like, it's already getting to a point where it's too much, and how much more are the Marlins going to take from Jacob Stallings before, like, making a move on him? I don't know if I don't think he's going to finish the season with the Marlins. And then I know the depth, our catching depth is terrible in the whole organization. But if you look at, let's say, Austin Allen, today he hit an opposite field home run. Santiago Chavez, he sucks. But, like, at some point, like, it's not going to make a difference. Stallings is really bad. You might as well give someone else a shot. I'd probably say if we're out of it already, you're going to have to make a move on that. And then my last point is JT Chargois, like, one positive note. There's not a lot of positive, but I'll say one positive note. JT Chargois, watching him yesterday in person in his final rehab, outing, just what I noticed, like, man, JT, as soon as, like, I was sitting by the bullpen yesterday, dude, the guy was just focused, just to himself, not really chatting with anybody. Like, he wants to be back. I mean, he proved it with the strikeout yesterday. And I think he had, like, I don't even think he even hit, like, 15 pitches in yesterday's inning that he pitched. So I'm pretty excited to have him back. And, yeah, just that's all I had to say. Thanks for allowing me the time.
Nice, of course, man. If that's all you got, then
that was a good one. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, because you touched on some things we already mentioned on here, where I understand what you're saying about the starters, and sometimes putting them in those positions to fail when they've already done something good, and you really want to, like, hand it over to a fresh arm, but we're at a point where they've just been so reliant on that bullpen. They've used them for the second most innings of any other team. You can't always pull the starters at the optimum time. Otherwise, you're going to overuse the relievers. And then you have, AJ Puck getting hurt all of a sudden. It can come very suddenly with these guys. You don't know where the breaking point is with these relievers all the time. Even if you do try to give them ample days off in between and limit them to less than 2 innings in all their appearances, that's the other side of it is, no matter which way you do it, it's damned if you do or damned if you don't. Either the starters are in a position where you feel like you're pushing them too far, or the relievers are in a position where, you're setting them up to get worn out, and you're digging deeper into that depth that you don't know when that drop off is going to come with the quality of the relievers right now. The only solution is the starters should pitch better. We had higher expectations for these guys. That Sandy, based on what he showed last year, he was pitching deep into those games, and he was still looking strong and efficient and calm deep into those games last year. So they were relying on him to do more of the same, and they were hoping that somebody else in this rotation, anybody else, could consistently go deep into games. And some of those guys got hurt, and then the other ones that are in the rotation right now just aren't doing it. So that's the problem, is you just need the starters to pitch better, and that solves a lot of issues. But the starters are just not putting guys away as efficiently as they need to, and they're throwing a lot of high stress pitches because there are all these runners on base they weren't expecting. Then the team's just not going to be very good. It's kind of as simple as that. You need those guys to pitch better. And on the catching front, I understand the frustrations with Stallings. It's just Austin Allen is not the answer. They just don't have an answer internally for a catcher right now. And it is fair to ask, when do they find something outside the organization that might be an upgrade? There is some urgency building because their catching situation is as bad as anybody's in the league. It's just really hard to find a decent external option out there that another team is willing to give up for you at this stage of the season when we're only a quarter of the way into it.
One last thing, guys, before I get off, our bullpen situation, just like overall, like if we start losing guys in the bullpen, like I feel like we're screwed. Like I feel like in like AAA, just AAA in general, since I watch them closely living up here, like there isn't really a lot of good answers, honestly. If I feel like guys start to go down. Yesterday, like Soriano, he allowed like 7 runs in like 2 innings. He had a terrible terrible outing yesterday, and that one really hurt, especially since he was just up like here recently. A lot of hype on him. I was like, man, he's like our bright, like our what to look forward to in our bullpen in the future. I don't know, man. It's looking kind of rough, man.
Yeah, they really did my boy Soriano tough the other day.
Well, Brian, we thank you, and some good questions for you. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll bring Romeo in here. Alex Carver's in here. Kevin really wants to hear about the minor leaguers, so we can do that here briefly as well. I have Romeo in here. Anyone else who has any questions, go ahead. So we seem to be wrapping up here just a little bit, but Alex Carver, you've been put on the spot. Kev wants to know about what Jacob Miller did.
Oh, I know. I spoke to Carver, but I'll let Romeo go first before we do minor league talk.
Oh, you had asked, or Ryan had asked who needs to step up, and nobody said John Birdie. I feel like he's just not doing enough, especially on the bases. He gets on base and he just sits on the first base and just doesn't want to run. I don't know if he's just like not confident or he's just it's actually very aggravating to watch, and that's all I really just wanted to say, because he gets on base and then he's on first, and he led the league in steals last year. The bases are bigger. It's literally a better opportunity to him to steal, and he's just on base. Then they ground into a double play, and he ends, and it's annoying. And I know he doesn't really, it's part of his game, but I would like to see him bunt once in a while, try and turn a bunt, and if he gets on base, a single into a double, he's fast. He steals bases. That's his thing. He's not there to hit for power. He popped up like 2 times today. Like I'm ranting now because it's actually very aggravating, because he gets on base. Then let's say it's Soler or it's Cooper. The only reason that him is because India had to go deep into the outfield, but Cooper hit into a double play. He hit into another double play and got blessed that Birdie was running down the line, because if it's anyone else, they both doubled up. He rushed his throw and he got blessed that India threw like a balloon to first base. You have to steal. You have to run. We got swept against Atlanta, bro. Austin Riley's in the outfield. He's not stealing. He's in the outfield and he's just watching him. It's the most annoying thing to watch ever. I'm sorry. It's just annoying because they end up grounding into double plays. Oh, they strike out 2 times. There's an out. You get thrown out because you're stealing. You're trying to put your team into a better position. The team is not scoring any runs. It's not. What are they gonna do? You get out. You get out. Today, the dude bobbled the ball in the outfield, and you tried to steal third. You tried to get the third. There was no reason for that. There was no reason. Keep going, Romeo. Keep going. I want to hear it all.
It's just he misjudged the ball. I understand. Okay, he misjudged it. Why not do that in other positions? It's not like they're playing close to third. That the dude throws the ball, you're like, okay, I'm frozen. Riley's in the outfield. They're playing deep. They're not playing short. It's so there. They don't want anything to get past them. They don't want anything to get past, and he's just not stealing. Then it's the most annoying thing ever, and just that's somebody that needs to pick up, because he had 40 something plus steals last year. He has like 3 all year this year. He's getting benched and he's not doing anything.
So what are your thoughts on Gene Segura as a player, Romeo?
Yeah, I need to continue, Romeo. This is generational.
Gene Segura is absolutely terrible. And this is the thing. The other day, again with Yuri, Segura's on first with in the bottom of the 8th, down 1, and you're not bringing Birdie out to steal? What are you doing? Skip, please. And then they steal Segura and gets frozen. Who do they think Segura is? Please, somebody explain to me. Is he some speed threat that you can be like, yeah, I want this guy stealing? Come on. Let's be serious here. It was terrible managing by Skip this on the first game against the Reds. I'm sorry. I like Skip. He's changing the team. The team is different. Bro, you got to learn that you got somebody like Birdie. I understand he's not stealing. Bro, you got to steal. Tell him, get on base, steal. You're putting Hampton in over Birdie because Hampton steals. You left Segura in. You lost the first game. You gave Yuri another game. You have Segura stealing. What are you doing? Please explain. Somebody explain to me why he decided to keep. You have Birdie. You like him at third. I understand. You had Wendell. If you want to throw him at third and decide Hampton needs to play short. I don't know. Somebody, you left Segura to steal. He got frozen. He was frozen. I believe it was Segura. And I remember I was talking to my friend and my friend was there. I'm like, bro, what is he doing? Why not? It doesn't make any sense. And it's the same thing I'm saying. Like, they end up getting into double plays. Look how they beat Cleveland. They were stealing and they beat Cleveland. They were playing small ball. It was like they left Cleveland and forgot to play small ball. Like when you win like that, you don't have power hitters. You have Soler. That's it. That's the only power hitter that can really hit. Honestly, Jazz thinks that he can come up and hit tanks. I'm sorry. You swing for contact, and I've been saying it for like months. Like you swing for contact, and the home runs come. Look in the series, he hit for contact. He had 2 home runs back-to-back games.
All right. We're talking about steals, but how about Jacob Stallings not being able to run down any runners? So, what do you think there?
Yeah. No. Thank you, Romeo. I had to mute him right there because I have a noise complaint from my neighbors. They can hear him so loudly through my speakers that it's going through the walls. Getting complaints about it. That was terrific. Just to underscore some of the things that he said, Birdie is reaching base just as much as he did last year when he led the majors in steals, and yet he is on pace to steal about 24 bases this year instead of 41. That's a pretty big difference. And that is it is a surprise and somewhat of a disappointment that him in particular has been more passive as a base runner than he was a year ago. But he touches on with the double plays. That is everybody could agree on that they ground into double plays as much as any team in all of baseball. The double play is kind of the worst thing aside from a triple play. No triple plays yet from this team. That's what we could be grateful for. They haven't hit into any triple plays yet, but they've hit into it's been a big thing holding back this offense, that they hit the ball on the ground a lot, and that when they hit it on the ground, the runners are not in scoring position yet. So that's a big limitation on this offense that's so reliant on singles right now, and it's not utilizing enough power, and it's not utilizing enough base running to get those guys into scoring position themselves. If you have this team that is now down a few talented hitters, they're going to, by necessity, they're going to have to make some of these decisions about more stolen base attempts, more hitting and running, and just more bat control overall from these guys to understand the premium importance of elevating the ball to avoid those type of situations. So I think he made some great points, Romeo. That's why he's on every time with us, because he makes great points, just in limited doses, let's say.
I love that was very, very excellent. I feel like it's very well said. You kind of encapsulate Marlins fans' feelings all in one. That was very, very helpful. So thank you for that.
I don't think anyone else can top that.
I love you, Romeo.
I think that's a great way to end Mother's Day.
Yeah, we might have to go off on that. Jacob Miller can wait.
Oh,
so, do we have any last things to add? I think that's how we have to go out.
Come on.
Let's take that as a no. So, that being said, we got a little bit of a decent crowd here towards the end of this space. It was Mother's Day.
Grant, Nick Forte is also pretty bad this year.
Oh, terrible. Worst catcher duo in the league. Yes, thank you all for coming out. We'll be here next week and see if any players can steal the base a little bit more. See what John Birdie and Gene Segura can do. And thank you all once again for coming out. Hopefully I feel better next week. I know I don't have my usual energy today, but pretty sick. But we'll be back here next week, 21st. The start of a long West Coast trip for the Marlins, San Francisco, Colorado, and Anaheim. We might have some people out on that road trip. I'm not sure who, but yeah, thank you all for listening, and we will see you guys here next week.